There are a lot of different girls in Uma Musume, but one of the first 5 you are given by default is Sakura Bakshin O, who is arguably one of the Uma Musume with the easiest careers. She's probably a majority of players' first trainees to actually win the URA finale. And this is because almost all of her races are short sprints. And not only that, but she's also a pretty capable frontrunner. Because of this, Sakura Bakshin O's stat requirements are very simple in order to clear her career. It's just a matter of stacking as much speed as possible, also known as Bakshin maxing. Since all of her races are short distance, she doesn't really need that much stamina, and since she's a front runner, she doesn't really need that much power to try and push past other races. Now, one thing about Sakura Bakshin O, if you've paid attention during her career, is that she's not exactly the smartest. I mean, you gaslight her into thinking that she runs a 3,600 meter long race by instead running 3 1,200 meter sprints back to back. And let's not forget about her own song with lyrics that only a genius could come up with. But this got me thinking, what if we didn't Bakshin max? What if instead of speed maxing, we instead tried to do the impossible and make Bakshin smart by training nothing but WIT and WIT only? Now, the funny thing is that she does have a 10% bonus when it comes to WIT training. And actually, training WIT does give a little bit of speed as well. So this isn't exactly far from the path of Bakshin maxing, right? Normally, training WIT in a regular run is sometimes nice since it has a lower failure rate than the others, and it also regains some energy as opposed to consuming energy. And you never know, sometimes that little bit of extra energy regain is enough to make sure that you don't fail on the next turn where you could have potential rainbow trainings. So training WIT is a nice alternative to resting, which would give no stats and always has a chance to have sleep deprived with Night Owl, which always sucks. But let's find out though if we can actually win the URA finale by training only WIT. Firstly, and honestly most important, are the legacies, because these legacies are pretty much going to be our main source of power and stamina, since again, we're not going to be training those directly. I tried many attempts at this run and many different combinations of legacies, but the ones for this run that I'll be showing here is using a Guest Mihono Bourbon with 3-star power and 6-star stamina sparks, and then as for my own legacy, I have a severe lack of 3-star sparks, so I had to settle on a 1-star power, 1-star guts, and a 3-star speed legacy. Importantly, I also managed to get Mile A out of this, which is going to be nice since Bakshin does have 2 mandatory mile races, one of which she does have to win. Next is the supports. Obviously, if we're only going to be training WIT, we're going to be using 6 WIT cards. Aside from a borrowed max limit break fine motion, I just slapped 5 SR WIT cards into the deck. They aren't a super high level because, well, I'm kind of broke, but importantly, despite having other SRs like for example Meijiro Dober or the Free Nice Nature, I'm specifically taking these 5 because those other 2 cards I mentioned do not have a specialty priority. This means that they are less likely to appear on the WIT training node, but more on that in just a second. Believe it or not, training for this run is going to be pretty simple. We're just going to be training WIT. But on turn 2, since none of the supports were on WIT for the bond increase, I did do recreation to improve our mood. I know technically this isn't a WIT training, but in the run before this, I did try and do exclusively WIT training only, not even recreation. But I got hit with the classic mood down into tissues from the raffle wombo combo, and so I had a bad mood for like the entire senior year. And the issue with this is that the support cards have a mood bonus multiplier, which is great when you have good or great mood, since the bonus you get from training is increased, but when you have a bad or awful mood, you have a negative multiplier. And then this mood bonus from supports make this negative multiplier even worse. But otherwise, at the debut race, we make sure to set Bakshin as a front runner because again, less stat requirements in terms of stamina and power, and we also grabbed the Duty of Dignity call skill just before from Meijiro McQueen, our legacy. And then of course we won our debut race. Also, side note, for videos like this, do you prefer the races being shown in portrait, which means I have more space on the right side to show some stuff, or landscape so you can see more of the race? I'm torn between the two myself, honestly. Anyway, the next goal was the KO High Junior Stakes, which was nothing too crazy. Just another one while we continue to train WIT. And already in our junior year, we're starting to get friendship trainings with Daiwa Scarlet thanks to her high initial friendship. And also, we get the WIT facility up to level 5 already. So now, even at normal mood, we will be getting at a minimum 4 speed every time we train WIT. More, of course, if our supports show up and if we have a better mood. Next up though is the Spring Stakes, one of 2 mile races for Bakshin. Thankfully though, we just have to participate. And while the race is going on in the background, I'll touch more on the support cards. I know I mentioned that cards like Nice Nature would not be good for this because of their low specialty, or actually they have no specialty rate. And you probably know that one of Kita-san Black's biggest benefits is her high specialty rate. Now, this does not mean that the Nice Nature WIT card is bad by any means. In fact, it's kind of the opposite. Nice Nature has no specialty bonus, sure, so she is of course less likely to appear on WIT training, but she's also now more likely to appear on other trainings then instead, like for example, say speed. And Nice Nature has a pretty high training effectiveness compared to other SR cards at 15%. So let's say you happen to get lucky and you have a speed training with 3 rainbows from your speed cards. Imagine now if Nice Nature happened to appear there too to further boost those gains by 15%. After all, in a regular run, you're probably not trying to hit WIT that often, and it's more of a, I've got nothing better to do, so let's just train WIT instead. And so the times that does happen and Nice Nature does align onto that WIT training, it's nice, but then you can also get benefits from her in the other nodes as well. So again, there's more than meets the eye when it comes to what makes a support card good. But back to the race though, Bakshin only comes in 4th place, but again, we just had to participate, so that is fine. But right after this race is our inspiration moment, as usual at the end of late March. And this is where we get a huge chunk of stats from our legacies. 19 speed, 35 stamina, 23 power, and 16 guts. That's 93 stats total from just sparks. And this is why it is so important to have good legacies. Before the next goal race in the Aoi stakes, we grab sprinting gear and Mihono Bourbon's Go First Forever unique skill to easily come in first place. But after that is the Sprinter Stakes, a G1 race. But before that is Summer though. Now technically speaking, Summer doesn't mean much in this run because the big benefit of Summer is that all facilities will be upgraded to level 5. Hence why you normally get so much more stats during Summer. Because now you can do those rainbow stamina trainings that you've been neglecting the entire time. But I already have WIT at level 5, so technically speaking, this is no different from training elsewhere. Although, the reporter Etsuko and director Akikawa won't appear on any of these trainings. So we don't have to worry about that awkward scenario where you have 5 people on a training node, but one of them is the director, which of course leaves more space for actual supports to appear. Now at the Sprinter Stakes though, we only place second to Nishino Flower, who is basically the antagonist of this career. She is our run killer. The amount of times that I've had these runs end because of Nishino Flower beating us in the final stretch is insane. After that though is the Takamatsunomiya Kinen, and as we approach the end of the classic year, we end up maxing out our WIT stat. But we can still train it just for the speed. Now, Bakshin already has 500 speed, but imagine if you were not doing this dumb challenge like I am, and instead you were actually alternating between, say, training speed and WIT as well, which is a pretty viable strategy. You never rest, you just train either speed or WIT, and pretty much every single turn you're getting some speed. That would honestly be a not that bad build for Bakshin. But anyway, in the race we're able to take the front position against the Maruzensky and win the race before hitting our second inspiration, which gives 25 speed, 40 stamina, 17 power, and 1 guts, for 83 stats total, or in other words, a 270 stat increase across the entire playthrough, including the starting stats. Now hopefully we've managed to inherit enough stamina for a mile race, because the very last goal for Bakshin is not just to participate, but to win the mile championship. Now, thankfully within the URA career, all of your stats basically receive a hidden 400 point buff, so although the stamina does look very low, it might actually suffice for a mile race. And on that topic, yeah, if you weren't aware, you get 400 points for all the stats in career mode, which means that if I were to now take this Bakshin into say something like team trials, she would not last at all in a mile race. This is why I mentioned that longer distance trainers are a bit harder to train compared to sprinters, because you have to find that delicate balance between getting enough stamina for them while still having enough speed. The next 3 races are the pretty easy G3 and G2 sprints that you gaslight Bakshin into running into thinking that it's a 3600 meter long race. But after those 3 races though is the run back for the Sprinter Stakes, where we need to come in first now. Notably here in this race, we were the only special frontrunner. The others were all NPCs, which is great, because if say Ines Fujin or Mihono Bourbon were out here, things would be a lot more difficult since they are actually capable of taking the lead from us. And as a frontrunner, if you aren't, well, you know, in the front, everything kind of falls apart, since you probably are not exactly built to be able to play catch-up. So we do get a bit lucky here with the RNG of the random other runners being NPCs. But of course, we also get lucky in that the one mandatory racer in this, Nishino Flower, ends up getting boxed in, which means that we're able to secure first in the Sprinter Stakes. And we also get a hint for the Moxie skill, which is huge. Any recovery skill is nice to compensate for the lack of stamina since we haven't been able to train it. And this comes at a perfect time as well, because the next race is a mile championship, where we need as much stamina as possible. Now this time around though, we have two other big name frontrunners in the race with Silent Suzuka and Ines Fujin, so things are pretty dicey. Of course Nishino Flower is also here, but usually the other named runners are random. But unfortunately, we can't keep up with the pace with Ines Fujin or Silent Suzuka, and we end up coming in 3rd place. But that's fine, because we do have clocks. Now, normally for the video, I would rewatch this race entirely, but I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like when you use a clock, if you just view the results instantly, it's like there's some voodoo magic or nonsense that goes on, and it just gives you the win despite coming 18th place in the last turn. Maybe it's like a case of the watched pot never boils, but I don't know. But we do end up winning the Mile Championship though, and so with that, we are on to the URA finale, which thankfully will all be sprints since that was the majority of races that we took part in. But with a handful of sprints left and 700 speed, we should be home free now, right? In our first qualifier race, we hit a late start though, something you never want to see, especially as a frontrunner. Again, if you are not the frontrunner, you're pretty much screwed. But once again, thankfully, there are no other big name frontrunners in this race, so as we approach the final corner, we manage to get back into 2nd place, but then everyone else starts passing us. But in the last 200 meters, we hit an uphill, which is exactly where Moxie will trigger for frontrunners, restoring some stamina and literally giving Bakshin a 2nd win to push forward and eke out a win. Moving on to the semifinals though, we are hit by yet another late start, and this time it is way worse. Down to the back half of the pack. So I skip to the end and I do the trusty old clock view results for another 1st place seemingly out of nowhere. And now there is just one last race left. And almost as a sign of good luck, the last training of our run is a 4 rainbow training, giving us a whopping 17 whole speed. But the finals have some tough competition. Not only is there Maruzensky and Mihono Bourbon as other frontrunners, but the Emperor Simboli Rudolph is out here too. Now, when I was recording this playthrough, I wasn't doing any live commentary, so I had my mic off to the side. But for this one race only, I'll let you hear what happened while I was watching this race in real time.
各馬娘揃って綺麗なスタートを切りました。誰が先頭に抜け出すか注目しましょう。先行争いはマルゼンスキー、9番ミホノブルボ、期待通りの結果を出せるか。1番人気ジンボリルドルフ、マルゼンスキー快調に飛ばしていきます。さあ激しい先行争いで前に出たのはマルゼンスキー、9番続いている。Come on, Maruzensky. Sakura Bakshin O。それを見るようにミホノブルボ。Come on, Maruzensky, stop, slow down, stop, please. Slow down, Maruzensky, please. Oh, and somebody Rudolph on the outside. No. Please. Wait, no, yes, push. Come on, get out of this corner. Come on. Come on, overtake Maruzensky, come on. Somebody Rudolph's on the outside. Oh, somebody Rudolph. Stop. Stop. Come on, Bakshin, come on, Bakshin, come on, Bakshin, come on, Bakshin, come on, Bakshin. Come on, Bakshin, come on, Bakshin. Come on, Bakshin. Come on, Bakshin. Let's go, Bakshin. Oh, we did it. We did it. What only? Oh, my goodness. And so, with a nail-biting finish, Sakura Bakshin O, with her infinite wisdom, outsmarts the entire field, and we managed to beat the URA finale, training nothing but WIT the entire run. And funnily enough, we actually got a pretty high score. Again, if you were to actually use some better cards and train speed along the way as well, this is very easily an A rank. But again though, just because it is a high score does not mean that it will do well in PvP. The low stamina really hurts, and you could see this somewhat in that last bit of the races, where if we didn't get Moxie to activate, I think those races would have been lost. Having a bunch of speed is great, but if you don't have the stamina to actually keep on running and racing, what's the point? Nobody cares how fast you can go if you're just sitting down, laying on the floor. But that just goes to show, maybe Bakshin really is a lot smarter than we gave her credit for. Nah, I doubt that. But if you enjoyed this run, or maybe if you learned something new about the power of WIT, why not consider liking the video and leaving a comment? I've got a few other Uma Musume videos in the works too. For example, a guide on how to make debuff for Uma Musumes and why you would want to in the first place. So be sure to also subscribe to be notified for when those do go up. But until next time, bye bye!